G'day web surfers, I'm Kabbaway, and today I'm going to present my analysis on a heavily debated topic from Ocarina of Time. Those who have played the iconic Legend of Zelda game will most likely recall Lon Ranch. Many will also remember the ranch's three main residents: Malon, a cheerful young redhead with a love of music and animals; Talon, her overly complacent and forgetful father; and Ingo, the ranch's overworked and ill-tempered stable hand. The absence of a maternal figure at Lon Ranch is an obvious feature. Referenced only in a few offhand comments, Malon's mother is not a particularly important character to the game's overall storyline. However, many have been fascinated by her nonetheless, and have even been determined to uncover more about this mysterious woman from Lon Ranch. This has led to many ideas regarding her potential identity and background, and how she influenced both Lon Ranch and its residents. Now, before we can explore each of these theories in depth, we must first take a look at what is known about Talon. We're not given many details about her, although it's widely speculated and accepted that she passed away before the events of Ocarina of Time. We can deduce how long ago she passed away through her daughter's age, with Malon appearing similarly aged to Link, who Miyamoto stated to be 9 years old at the start of the game. From this information, we know that Talon must have passed away recently enough to give birth to Malon. Therefore, her death must have occurred within 8 to 10 years of Ocarina of Time's beginning. Despite this seemingly wide time frame, it is likely that a considerable amount of time has passed since her demise, given the sporadic mentioning of her by her family, including the fact that Malon seemingly has no direct memories of her at all, only referring to Talon for her composition of Epona's song. The lack of reference to her in any of the photos, drawings, and posters around Lon Ranch, as well as from the residents of Hyrule and the Gossip Stones, further supports this. It is also evident that Talon had a major impact on people and animals alike via her composition of Epona's song, as Malon states that everyone enjoys it, including Ingo, who is usually bitter and dismissive of others. And the cows of Hyrule all have fond memories of the pasture which are triggered by hearing Link play it, which may allude to them all having called Lon Ranch their home at some point in their lives. It's unclear whether Talon's voice harbored any magical abilities, or that sentient beings simply share a mutual fondness for her and or the song. However, it is possible that the song may have helped tame animals to increase the productivity of the ranch. In many real-life cultures, it has been shown that animals and livestock can be trained to react to specific cues, including songs and music, to perform a variety of tasks, so this possibility is plausible. Perhaps this skill of hers contributed to Talon's trademark laziness, therefore necessitating Ingo's employment at Lon Ranch in the first place, but this will be elaborated on in a later video. The only other piece of in-game information about Talon are hints concerning her physical appearance. If Link speaks to Talon while wearing the Gerudo or Goron masks, the latter will comment that the mask reminds him of his wife, before retracting the statement after having second thoughts regarding the mask's resemblance to her. Some may dismiss his initial remark for both masks as an inconsequential gag, or claim that because he retracted the comment, it is no longer relevant. However, there must have been an element of truth in his statements for him to have associated the masks with his wife so instinctively, even the slightest visual connection that could trigger him to remember her. Therefore, Talon's initial statements can be considered sound evidence. These statements form the basis of the first theory concerning the identity of Malon's mother. Many have used these quotes to speculate that Talon was a Gerudo, Goron, or a hybrid of the two, and it is thought that he retracted his previous statement due to interracial relationships being considered taboo in this era of Hyrule history. This is a very popular theory and one which has been evaluated by many others, so I'll summarize my thoughts on this topic. The underlying issue with this theory is that Talon does not phrase this statement in a manner which would suggest a literal resemblance. He does not name the depicted races, and he says he is merely reminded of his wife, rather than having a stronger sense of deja vu be triggered by the masks. Therefore, it's not entirely clear if he is insinuating that his wife is of a different species to him. Also, the details which seem to support the idea of Talon being either a Gerudo or Goron are quickly debunked by the fact that Talon reacts identically to both masks, meaning that Talon is unlikely to be exclusively from either race. Despite the theory's popularity, Salon being a Gerudo is met with indisputable counter-evidence. Among these is that Ocarina of Time shows red-headed Hyruleans exist without Gerudo heritage. And because of the Gerudo's highly dominant traits, it is very unlikely Malon would have her Hyrulean features of light skin, pointy ears, and blue eyes if she was the daughter of a Gerudo. Furthermore, it is implied that Gerudo women in this era do not marry their suitors, meaning their affairs with males are brief, casual, and practical, lacking any sort of emotional basis or long-term commitment, which begs the question of why a Gerudo would defy this tradition in order to settle down with Talon. There is also the fact that it is unlikely that a Gerudo mother would leave her daughter in the hands of a Hyrulean male, especially one with ties to the royal family, when the Gerudo are typically seen keeping to themselves within Gerudo Fortress and are alienated from the rest of the Hyrulean races. The possibility of Salon being a Goron is even less supported, since Malon does not seem to share any of the Goron's behaviours or physical traits at all. According to the Great Deku Tree Sprout and Hyrule Historia, the Hyrulean Civil War took place as recently as 9 years prior to the events of Ocarina of Time, since the conflict was still occurring when Link was an infant. The specifics of this lengthy war are unknown, however the use of the word Hyrulean in the war's title implies that the conflict was interracial, meaning that most, if not all, the races were at war with each other, which is suggested by subtle hints in the game itself. Considering this context and how segregated and tense the races still are with each other, it is unlikely that Talon and Salon would have had an undeterred union and successful business if Salon was indeed of a race other than Hylian. With their courtship and marriage taking place during the interracial conflict, it is more likely that they would have been the targets of prejudice, discrimination, and possibly boycotting, which would have jeopardized their reputation and livelihood. If Salon was a hybrid, this would be even worse, as her interracial parents would have married and given birth to her well and truly in the midst of conflict, and she would have grown up in an extremely discriminatory environment which would carry on plaguing her into her adult and married life as the war continued. Therefore, if Salon was not a Hylian, it does not seem plausible that Lon Lon Ranch could be as successful as we are shown in the game, especially not to be trusted by the royal family itself. While King Hyrule does have a tendency to easily trust past enemies, it is doubtful that Lon Lon Ranch would be so revered by the more skeptical public, if they were given any reason to believe that Talon sympathized or fraternized with the enemy during the war. Therefore, the most credible explanation for Talon's statement is that he was simply making a casual joke, or instinctive remark about his wife's likeness to both races, and that he retracted his previous comment in order to avoid confusing Link and giving him the wrong idea about the nature of his marriage. It does not appear that he had intended to insinuate that he was ever part of an interracial marriage. Also, with such a taboo topic, the mixed marriage would likely have been mentioned by at least a couple of the citizens of Hyrule, or the gossip stones within the game if it were true. A second, lesser-known theory involves the inclusion of a female NPC in the beta version of Ocarina of Time, which the fanbase has affectionately nicknamed Aria. Aria first appeared in official images from early development in 1996 and 7, when Ocarina of Time was still being developed using the same programming as Super Mario 64. She was the first human character to be publicly displayed and programmed other than Link, and was apparently going to serve as a guide of sorts for him, giving him hints and tips whenever he spoke to her. After Ocarina of Time was remodeled to run on its own unique programming, it's said that Aria's model was scrapped due to compatibility issues. It is also possible that the introduction of Navi later in development negated the need for a hint-giving NPC. Aria does share a similar appearance as Malon, albeit with brown hair and eyes. Furthermore, there is a crayon drawing of a woman holding the Triforce inside Malon's room, who has the same hair and similar dress as Aria. This has led some to believe that this NPC was intended to be Malon's mother. Despite this fascinating discovery, there are still some notable flaws with this theory. Her character model name does not allude to her being related to Talon and Malon at all, having the very generic and neutral name Object Human. And Aria came into existence long before the father-daughter duo ever did. Despite fan efforts to fix Aria's model, a true restoration is not currently known to exist. In order to reconstruct how she would have been animated, Aria's model is often patched on top of adult Malon's, explaining why there are many unofficial images of her at Lon Lon Ranch. The only places where she was officially shown were in the town and by the lake. Therefore, she had no official affiliation with Lon Lon Ranch in the first place, making the possibility of her being related to Talon and Malon even less likely. Even the similarities between Aria and Malon may simply be coincidental. While many fans have assumed that the women in the development images are all the same character, it is evident that they are different, with the women having different dress designs, colours, seen in different locations, and even having different body builds. Nonetheless, given the general design similarities, it's plausible that the original Aria served as a prototype for these similar-looking NPCs. After Aria and her lookalikes were scrapped, it's possible that they served as inspiration for Malon's design as she was created later in development. This could explain the uncanny resemblance between the characters. Furthermore, Aria does not bear a credible resemblance to the Gerudo or Gorons. Her nose, eyes, mouth, and other facial features do not match those of the races in question. While the Gerudo mask may have reminded Talon of Aria due to its general aesthetic qualities, it's unclear why he would initially draw parallels between her and a Goron if Aria was indeed the identity of his wife. As previously established, Talon's initial reaction to both masks can be considered relevant evidence for Talon's appearance. Therefore, it is unjustified to disregard canon knowledge for the sake of this theory. As for the crayon drawing in Malon's room, it may just be an Easter egg referencing the discarded NPC character, or simply the result of Malon not having a crayon matching her own hair colour, as the girl in the Triforce drawing is very similar to the one in the butterfly drawing on the same wall, and in the former her clothes complement those worn by Malon herself. While the faces of the two female figures appear different, this could be explained by Malon trying to depict herself at different ages, as the woman in the Triforce drawing seems taller and has less squashed facial features. Alternatively, the difference in appearance may just be the result of Malon not yet having the artistic skill to consistently replicate drawn objects, or just be due to her youthful indifference to such subtle details. Ultimately, as Aria herself is only seen in beta material, she is not canon to the final game of Ocarina of Time, and therefore it is impossible to prove that she is, or was intended to be, Malon's mother. So with all this information considered, who could she be? Ocarina of Time offers no further clues as to who Salon was, and I, along with countless other fans and theorists, have exhausted the avenues of the first two theories. Despite this apparent dead end, I have developed a proposition of my own, which serves as a middle ground between the theory which takes Talon's statements too literally and that which dismisses them entirely. Instead, this theory is based on the notion that Salon was a Hyrulean with traits which are similar, but not necessarily identical, to both Gorons and Gerudo. To further explore this theory, we must consult an unexpected source, Ocarina of Time's sequel, Majora's Mask, and its setting, the land of Termina, a parallel world to Hyrule. Identical in appearance but not always in circumstance, many of the residents of both Hyrule and Termina act as interdimensional counterparts to one another. Among the Terminian residents are a number of characters who do not appear to have a Hyrulean counterpart present at the time of either game. One such character is a woman whose Hyrulean counterpart may be the elusive identity of Salon herself. The suspected woman is none other than Madame Aroma, wife of Clocktown's mayor and mother of the cursed Cathay. Now, before I delve further into this theory, I feel a disclaimer is in order. While I came to this conclusion myself while playing Majora's Mask back in 2015 prior to having any access to Zelda forums, I am not the only one who has noticed the plausibility of Madame Aroma being Salon's Terminian counterpart. In saying that, I will elaborate on this idea beyond its current existence as a humorous idea, and try my best to find any evidence or plausible deductions about her as a person. Observing her physical appearance, Madame Aroma exhibits many traits which complement those of the Goron and Gerudo races, without her looking exactly like them. Comparing her to a Goron, many similarities can be seen. These include a predominantly bald head with hair only growing on the mid-scalp region, prominent nostrils and lips, and an endomorphic body build with well-defined arms. One more similarity is the prevalence of the colour yellow in their designs. However, there's no guarantee that Madame Aroma's Hyrulean counterpart wore identical clothes to her, so this particular detail remains a trivial comparison. Madame Aroma's resemblance to a Gerudo is much less pronounced. However, she still exhibits a handful of traits that correspond with those of the all-female race. The main traits her and the Gerudo share are their long, slick red hair and their pointed noses, although Madame Aroma's nose is smaller. Based on a picture of her and her husband in the 3DS remake of Majora's Mask, Madame Aroma previously had a slim figure, similar to that of the athletic Gerudo. Madame Aroma's eyes are likely squinted in the present due to her larger build, as the picture indicates that her eyes were slightly more visible as a younger, thinner woman. Gerudo eyes are significantly narrower than those of the Goron, and more closely resemble the shape of Madame Aroma's eyes, regardless of her body shape or size. Given how squinted Madame Aroma's eyes are, and the inability to distinguish finer details in the picture, the colour of her eyes remains unknown. Another similarity Madame Aroma shares with the Gerudo is their mutual use of golden jewellery embedded with red gems. But once again, Madame Aroma's Hyrulean counterpart may not have worn these sorts of accessories, so this similarity is not a valid piece of evidence. In summary, as a younger, thinner woman, she more closely resembled a Gerudo, while as an older, larger woman, she bears more resemblance to a Goron. In my personal opinion, Salon being the Hyrulean counterpart of Madame Aroma is the most likely option, as it satisfies the criteria established by Talon's statements and Malon's full-blooded Hylian appearance. Now that we have found the likely blueprint for Salon's identity, there are other factors I have yet to explore about her and her life. However, I will cover these in a later video. If you enjoyed what I have so far, please leave a like and leave your questions, comments and feedback below. If you want more elaboration on the points addressed in this video, please check out my old article which I based this video on. Lastly, please keep in mind that this is just my interpretation of the available evidence, and that I don't claim this to be irrefutable fact or canon. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you all later. Bye!